Calling the Government Services Committee meeting to order. Annie, would you do the attendance?
Sure. Ms. Vedder?
Present.
Mr. Steingart?
Here.
Mr. Ruiz?
Here.
Mrs. Edwards? Here. Mr. Sorensen?
Here.
Okay. Well, I want to start off by letting everybody know that the first item, discussion item, I don't know how many people are aware of the fact and or use Verizon, but when I was an employee at Catskill Regional Medical Center, I found that I got a good discount with Verizon. And when I switched and no longer was employed there, I tried to find out what the discount was here. And yes, there is a discount. So all the employees here, I don't know if they're aware of it, but there is a 19% discount if you use Verizon Wireless. And there's more information about that. So apparently it exists, and I want to make sure people know that who are employed here at the hospital.
All you have to do is sign and tell them. Yeah. Is it retro?
No. But there is information, and there you go.
That's great news. Thank you.
So it'll be out there in an email to everybody who's an employee here who uses Verizon. And now we're going into presentations, and I'm asking Sam. I asked Sam regarding the towing policy information, and what we're doing here is Sam's going to provide us with information regarding the towing policies and what goes on in various other counties. And after this presentation, I would like to invite the sheriff and the other towing companies and stuff, and hopefully we then can move that discussion.
Someone's vibrating.
To
Sounds very personal.
public safety, since that's where the towing actually would happen. But I thought we needed a clear understanding that there are different policies in surrounding counties.
Kitty, would you consider entertaining letting the departments go so they can get on their way, so they don't, I don't know that this pertains to some of them.
Is that okay?
What was that?
We changed the order.
We'll change the order.
Just because I know some of them are anxious to get back to
Absolutely.
work.
Jumping at the fence. Thank you for getting me off the hook.
Alrighty, so we'll do the presentation after the reports. So I guess Kathy, you're up. We're doing purchasing.
Okay, here's the summaries of all the bids. Okay, the first bid for this month was seasonal produce. This is a local vendor, the Farmers Market, and it's a bid where every item is awarded to one vendor. The next bid is chainsaw and small engine parts, and that was awarded per item to 2 vendors, 1 local. The next bid is printing. That is awarded per group, and there's 1 local vendor on that one. Steel and aluminum, that is awarded per group. Concrete, that is awarded per group, and there is 1 local vendor, Cranesville. Electrical and plumbing, that is awarded per item, and the whole bid went to Schmidt's Wholesale. Then we had recapping and mounting of tires, that was awarded per group, and we have 2 local vendors. And then copy paper, that is a New York State contract vendor who we bid with, and we did better than the state contract price, so it was very good. We processed 283 purchase orders last month, and we have a recyclables report if anybody's interested.
Thank you, Kathy. Anybody have any questions on Kathy's report? Okay.
I have a question, but it doesn't pertain to the report. I just want to know how we're going with our contract reviews.
Kathy, you will.
Contract review, there is a resolution that we'll get to later that I've asked for additional time. As you know, at the beginning of the year, you asked that I review all contracts to see which ones go through procurement or not. And I believe I have the Department of Family Services left in the process. You'll see there's many resolutions this month for the Family Services Group. It's a huge job added to everything else that I'm in charge of.
That's why I'm asking. I wanted to know if you needed more help.
It would be very helpful if I could get a position, yes. Because it's a continuation of it now. It's not only that we reviewed and it's going through the office, But now we need to keep up with it, make sure the insurances or the bonding, whatever goes with it, is always there. We have 3 people in my office that are in charge of procurement for the entire county, and all of you here know how much work there's been with all the projects now.
Well, it's
How
a
many more
monumental task.
RFPs that we're doing, so I appreciate that.
And do you think that in this process, we've actually been able to realize a significant savings in the way these contracts are reviewed? Because that was the end result, and if we go
Right.
through all of this, you know, we need to at least be able to say we've
That we
made
did
this
that.
much headway or not.
I know that what I did is, in everything that I've done, I have put the price into the proposal, saying this, because of the economic climate of the county, this is the only price we'll consider. So I've kept the price flat. Has it lowered? No, not in any of the cases that I know of, but at least we've kept it the same. So it also opened it up to people who, without going through our office, didn't even know that they could provide the service to the county. So it was a good exercise in maybe getting, you know, not having it stale, getting new vendors to help.
And one of the other issues that I want to ask has to do with the contracts regarding, and I realize that Cindy's not here and she wants to put it on her agenda, but might as well give the heads up. There's been a lot of questions about foster care contracts, and one of the questions is, did we under allocate? And we had tabled that resolution in DFS. The numbers that came through are about a quarter of what they were last year. And so when I asked, well, what happens if we get to that not to exceed order midway through the contract, because they're in a different financial year than we are. They start in the middle of June. And the response I got was, well, we'll just do a budget modification at that time. And that to me is a bit scary. If you're dealing with a discrepancy of 5.8 million and 1 million, which is what we passed in the resolution, I don't really see how we could have a budget modification for $4 million.
First of all,
Can I clarify
they
something?
don't
Yeah.
go through our office, but go.
Right, but, okay, the DFS has a budget, unbudgeted amount, and it's my understanding that they haven't exceeded the budgeted amount. The contracts with each vendor were larger not to exceeds, but that didn't mean that's what was paid.
That's what we need, that's what I asked for, what the actual costs were.
Okay, the amount not to exceed in those contracts were kind of selected, but not necessarily to say this is what the vendor will get at the end of that year period. There was contracts in place to allow, if you need to place a child for services. There's various levels of care and therapeutic care and all whole menu of services some of these children need. So there was contracts in place with all these agencies. So if the court said they need this type of care, the procurement process didn't start right then and there to get the contract. It was already in place. At no time did they say this is what this vendor is going to get for any given year. It was a number in the contract just so there was a contract in place. But the fiscal officer in DFS, and I'm sure she could explain further, never exceeded the budgetary amount that was allocated in their budget. And that's where there's a large difference. If you add up every amount not to exceed, yes, it was a huge number. But at no means did they ever go over the appropriations within their budget. So there's the contract not to exceed amount, which is very different than the budgeted amount, which was also different than the actual amount spent. And the difference between the budgeted amount and the total contracts that could exceed is this number that everyone keeps talking about, but it was never spent. It was out there on paper to allow if you needed to use that vendor's services. Many of those vendors didn't have any services for a number of years even. It was a matter of if I needed to place this child who in care for this specific type of service at this specific location, you can do it now because we already had the paperwork done.
Okay, so let me rephrase the question. If we have under budgeted with $1 million, what happens if we bump up and we exceed that amount? We just shrug and say, oh, it's a budget
No,
modification?
if you have to spend more than $1 million, then it would be a budget modification.
But I don't know that it's accurate that we only budgeted $1 million. I don't know the exact number.
That
but
was
it
the amount I raised my hand to.
That was in the cover memo of the resolution. The resolution was silent. That one specific resolution was silent on the amount to be spent. The cover memo had roughly $1 million between state, federal, and county. I'm still looking into it, but to my knowledge, there's other resolutions that'll get you to that $4 million. That one resolution is for specific placements. There's other sets of resolutions that go into that budgeted number, but I'm looking into that.
See, because I want to be able to know, if we've increased the amount of paperwork and things that people have to sign and tracking documents and everything, and at the end of it, we come to a resolution we still don't know, then it's a lot of wasted time for a lot of staff.
Well, and that was on the old legislative memorandum, that $1 million, to my knowledge. It was
The
not.
one we passed 2 months ago?
Yeah.
Or a month ago that we tabled?
Yeah, it was the
Are we doing the right thing?
in terms of.
Of knowing what the actual costs are, what the budgeted costs are, and the process that we go to if we have under budgeted because
Again,
we
I
don't know what the
yeah,
true costs are?
Yeah, you're more than, you should know what the actuals and budgeted, but I think there's a missing piece. I think that $1 million isn't the whole picture, and Commissioner Parker can chime in, he just stepped in, but I don't think the $1 million in that cover memo was the whole picture of what we have budgeted, this $4 or $5 million in the whole line. I think there are other resolutions with other dollar amounts that will get you to that $4 or $5 million that's in the budgeted, that's what's budgeted.
With different vendor names on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the issues that the cover memo had the $1 million, and then they're questioning why is that different than the $4 or $5 million we have budgeted.
Right, the amount budgeted is in excess of $5 million. When we submitted the resolutions for contract extensions in April, foster care was tabled. The resolutions were tabled. And then when we were getting ready for May, that one resolution with that dollar amount and that internal document, what is the name of that?
Legislative memorandum.
The legislative memorandum contained a $1 million figure. And that was the resolution that was referred to that authorized the foster care contracts and services. Within the resolution, there was no amount specified within that resolution that was passed, but it's operating under what's within the approved budget for 2013. Now that the foster care contracts go historically in the state just sent us a new model contract it goes from July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2014. So the amount that's in there is $5 million what's budgeted. What kind of started us looking at it was the historical expenditure of approximately $4 to $5 million, and then the total number of contracts we had authorized with the NTEs, the not to exceeds, was 8.8 million. Now, what we wanted to do was to bring in line the not to exceed amounts with what was actually appropriated and budgeted. And so we had looked at all of our foster care contracts. We saw that there were maybe 8 or 9 where we hadn't used the facility in a 3-year period, and there's much administrative work in prepping those contracts, getting them back and forth, and we just ended those contracts because we hadn't used the facilities, knowing that in the event we needed to use them again, we could open the contract back up. But the amount appropriated with the budget is $5 million. That $1 million figure there, like I said, there were 20 different resolutions that were presented in April. That one was pulled for May, and that one contained in that internal document the $1 million figure. But there's no reduction from $5 million to $1 million with what's budgeted. I don't know if that makes sense or.
Help me
I'm following
understand
you
this,
on.
if I may. We had budgeted $5 million approximately.
Yes.
We made a separate resolution that for the $1 million of the $5 million, And with the not to exceed, it was, with all the separate ones, was 8 million. So we was bringing ourselves back down to what was budgeted, which was the 5 million, instead of allowing a credit limit of 8. Is that
Right,
about what you're saying?
My concern was having 5 million appropriated and having contracts authorized for 8.8 million. So we wanted to
Stay within the
stay
5.
within the appropriation, the 5. And there was not a $4 million reduction to foster care contracts.
So we're spending about what we've spent all along. We've just limited our credit limit, brought it down from the 8 back down to the
what's
5,
actually
which is budgeted.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Does that clarify things for you, Cora?
Well, I think the question is about the procedure going forward, and I think it's gonna come up in the Department of Family Services, is that the whole picture is brought at one time instead of just one piece at one time, and then another piece at another time. So we understand going forward.
And there was a question of, and we have gone on historicals with the NTE amounts with particular providers. And there have been a couple of providers where we have approached the NTE amount with that provider. We will modify that contract, and if it's a situation where a child would, they have to stay there. We're not going to move a child because we're at the NTE. We can adjust. We're just living within that $5 million amongst all of the providers.
As a legislator, my job is appropriations, and I need to have the correct information when I'm raising my hand to pass a resolution. And we've put in all of these mechanisms in place, all of these flow, charts where people sign off. So I need to know when I'm, raising my hand to something, that all the information I need is there, and that I don't get subsequent information or not the whole picture. And that's why I think it's good if we, unfortunately Cindy's not here right now, but that it is brought up in Department of Family Services as the whole picture, what we're doing.
I understand. I just know that each of historically there's not been a capped amount in that foster care resolution. The resolution just authorizes the DFS to contract with those providers with no specified amount of money in there.
Well, maybe you weren't here when I said I'm concerned that we then just have a budget modification for something that we could have known all along, because this is what's been going on for the last 4 or 5 years.
The only budget modification would be if they exceeded the 5 million and change, that
Right.
their placements just skyrocket for whatever reason, and then that would be, the money's appropriate for the contracts based on historic caseload. So the only way we'd need a budget mod is if the amount of placements increase significantly.
So I would suggest at this point in time, we move that discussion to the Department of Family Services Committee so that we can continue on since it's 10 after 12. Is that okay?
Yeah, I was.
Okay. Okay, so is that it for purchasing? Okay, so it's time for Board of Elections. Welcome.
I forward all the game.
Like the comic relief.
I guess the best news we have today is so far, as we know, there's no news from the State Senate on the early voting issue. And their legislative session is due to end either today or tomorrow, unless they extend it. So the fact that they haven't had a serious discussion on the early voting issue, to us is good news, because that means it's very unlikely to pass anything that would put that in effect. And that's what we were hoping for. Some of the other things we've been working on for the last month is continued correspondence with the Attorney General's office on the issue involving the Spanish language election. We did 11 poll site surveys, physical surveys, that were required by the state out of the 38 sites that we have. We're working on the required machine testing, quarterly tests that have to be done on the voting machines. Upgrades to the machines in the EMS ballot system were finished, and there was a webinar involved in that at the end. couple of the other members of the Board of Elections sat in on. We're working on required reports that are ongoing for New York State and the federal government. Election issues, it's that time of the year, so we're answering questions for people who ask about petitions, caucuses, and financial filings and things of that nature. We work on the daily registrations, people who've moved or passed away, and new registrations. The information had to go to our vendor NTS for the mail check cards, which get mailed in a timely fashion this time of year to each and every registered voter in the county, telling them where their poll site is and so on and so forth. And inspector training, we had to get letters out to all the poll inspectors. We have to upgrade the training to include some of the issues with the Spanish issue we're talking about for the upcoming election season, and the paperwork that goes with it, so that at the end of the day we can pay them for their fine work. So, if Ann has anything to add?
Of course, like all departments, we're working on our budget presentation.
Right.
With respect to the AG's office, overall in our teleconference with them, they were very pleased with the efforts that we've made to reach out to the Spanish population. We've had modest success in getting Spanish-speaking inspectors, and that's an ongoing process. They did, however, set a deadline with us of July 15th in order to revise our inspector training manual to include language access. So we'll be working with them on that. They wanted to do it at the beginning of July. We reminded them that our petition process sort of peaks between the 8th and 11th when all of the petitions are filed in our office. And this is what we call a local election year, in which every supervisor, town clerk, tax collector, 2 council people, judges, assessors, and highway superintendents are up. So our office was very busy in assisting all of those people with their petitions, which are now being circulated to be filed again between the 8th and the 11th of July. Our inspector training is coming up at the end of July, and that's a 3-day process. We break it up into morning and afternoon sessions, and the state does now require that inspectors are certified annually. They have to attend the class, they have to pass the exam on an annual basis because there aren't so many changes relative to the machines and the procedures involved on election day. So that's an ongoing process. Rodney made mention of the mail check cards. This is an annual mailing of a postcard that goes out to every registered voter in the county. This year, again, in accordance with New York State AG's office requests, all of the cards will be printed in both English and in Spanish. So we had to double the size of the card. It'll be a bifold, essentially. The size will be the same, but it will double in size. It also doubles the cost of the printing. We were, however, successful in obtaining a bulk mail permit for the Board of Elections, which will reduce our mailing costs from 46 cents a piece to 15 cents a piece. But we're required as well by New York State law that each of those pieces must be returned. So I'll have to be working with Josh, I presume, in setting up an account with our local post office, a prepaid account, so that each of those cards that are not able to reach a voter are returned to the Board of Elections. That'll be at the cost of 46 cents a piece. But even with all of those costs factored in, we're looking at a modest savings of at least $5,000 a year on this particular function alone. And if and when we ever do go to early voting and have to do a countywide mailing, again, we can make use of the permit on a regular basis as a non-for-profit. The permit doesn't cost us anything.
Thank you. I just have a question regarding, I know that some places have had their voting booth changed. When you send out the mailing, do you highlight when it's changed?
Yes.
Because a lot of people just, okay, I got my ticket again.
It's very clear in bold where the poll site is.
And that it's a
particular
change,
election district.
not just where it is, but that it's a change.
Yeah, it just seems that no matter how specific you make that information, there will undoubtedly be somebody who will not read that, so I can't guarantee it's a 100% deal.
Or they'll just swear that of the 45,000 cards printed, theirs didn't have that information on it. So.
Yes, it does. It will have the new information.
Thank you.
We also would work as we have in the past, especially the first time that there's a poll site change, with the local town people like
So that it's
town clerk,
posted locally
that
and
they would put a
it's-
sign on that poll site, the old poll site, saying that it was moved and the new location. So if somebody did go there on election day to vote, and they didn't read the mail check card or for whatever reason didn't get the information, we would try and have a sign posted there saying where the poll site was moved to, so that they wouldn't be prohibited from voting that day.
Thank you.
We're in an off election year, but how many races are there?
Oh my God.
Well, it's not an awful election year for us. A local election year is quite busy.
There's three.
It's an awful election year for you.
There are 3 county races. There are 3 county races, and you have judicial delegates and alternates and state committee people. You have
14 supervisors.
committee people on the county level for the Democrat and Republican parties, conservative parties. So, you know, it's an off year, but it is, but it isn't. It's just an off year as far as having
Well, I just wanted to get a
Senate
sense of what
assembly.
happens when you have, you know, like there's, you said 14 supervisors and council people. 30 council people, and you have, but the committees is not, that's just a party.
Yeah, we're not sure how the September primary is going to shape up yet. We are aware that there's probably going to be required primary in some of the towns. Doesn't necessarily mean that it would be countywide. We're basically past the county issues, the county races. We're pretty sure that we wouldn't have to have a primary countywide. So that would, the primary in September would boil down to just town issues. So there may be 2 towns or 4 towns, or it could end up all 15, but it's not likely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where are you going?
Cooperative Extension, welcome.
Hi, Kitty. How's everybody doing?
Hi.
Our report. Actually, I might just pull up my chair here. Easier. Congrats on the grant for the food hub. We're pretty excited about that. So that was great news. And Cornell's looking forward to working with you on that. When I passed around the report, I just had kind of 6 items here. And then we attached our different reports so you can take your time to read that. The last page, there was a great article yesterday in the Times Herald Record on the kitchen that we're doing in the basement of the extension building. So really excited about that. We submitted a grant, and we'll hear at the end of June. It's total with some other funding. It's going to be about $50,000. So we're pretty excited about it. It's looking. We got word the other day that it's looking really good. So we're excited about that. And what's important about that is the work that we're doing, kind of on the food systems, connects directly to this food hub concept. So it's important as we develop the food hub concept that there's these small outlets in the community, and then they link into the bigger county efforts, and they link into the efforts that are going on in Kingston and regionally. So that's the way we're approaching it. We're really excited about some of the smaller projects going on at Extension right now. So I'll let you know. I'll send out an email if we get that grant. We should hear in a couple weeks. Nicole Sullivan is here from our office. She heads up the marketing and PR. And I want her to briefly pass around the invite for, we're launching our 100-year campaign. And we're really excited to celebrate the past accomplishments of Extension and look forward to some of our plans for the future. So if you want to give a brief update on that.
We're very excited to launch our Centennial campaign with this celebration on July 12th. It's a pre-dinner affair from 4 to 6, and I want to personally invite everyone in this room and everyone you know. We're going to have music, youth appearances, youth performances, speakers. Your very own Scott Samuelson has agreed to speak there, and we.
Get him to sing too.
Yeah, we're working.
You come and print something.
Alan's gonna come.
I'm not allowed. I didn't say you were going to get paid.
Move it right along.
We'll volunteer Alan too.
We'll have some locally catered food by natural contents. We are having it sponsored, refreshment sponsored by local Cornell alumni, and so we're very excited. Going forward this year into our centennial year of 2014, We are going to go into some new initiatives, including the Eat Kitchen, the entrepreneurial and training kitchen, and on site. We're going to have some very special events for the centennial, including a traditional barn dance, a New York City event spotlighting local agriculture and its importance to city residents, and a marathon-type trail hike on site on a nature trail. And we're going to close the year in 2014, our centennial celebration, with a lovely gala. In addition to that, we have a number of volunteer committees set up to help organize these events. And they can, for example, we'll have a heritage committee set up some history exhibits around the county and at the events. You can look forward to that. And we're going to have a new campaign office debut hopefully next week in our building, where volunteers can foster their talents and ideas, and we'll be creating a centennial website, a journal, and calendar with some old photos and articles. And one of our very special projects that we're looking forward to is we're going to have some older 4-H youth doing some interviews around the county with farmers and other people involved with CCE over the years, collecting their stories and recording them. And we're very excited about that. Our campaign funds are going to be used towards capital expenses and working to further develop our building sustainably and as a better educational center. So we're very excited. I'm very nervous. It's my first day.
Thanks. Good job. I got two more items. That's okay. So first is I think I mentioned before, but we're moving forward pretty seriously now with a master plan for our building. And Aileen Gunther's office has set aside $50,000. And we had a meeting this morning with Josh, and we're just looking at the bigger picture, having a plan, then moving forward with some of the renovations and things that need to be done. So I'll keep you posted on that. But I wanted you to know we did meet with Josh, and we are putting together a master plan. And then the last item is number one, which I kind of saved for last here, because I'm sure a lot of people have been hearing about some of the cuts that have been happening and budget issues. And Kitty actually was at our board meeting, which was great. And what we decided is, given some of the shortfalls that just continued to linger over the organization, we had a kind of an emergency meeting, and we decided by the end of the year to really get to the rock bottom of these budget cuts and try to almost reinvent the organization, because as we tried the furlough, we tried some of these emergency fundraising and things like that, and the gap was just too big to overcome. So the more, I've only been here 4 months, but the last month I really have been committed to digging into the budget and looking at the numbers and getting the honest numbers on the table. And we saw the shortfall is just too big, given the cuts that we received from the county and from the state level and even the federal funds, and then some fundraising goals that we had that we didn't meet, came out to about a $200,000 shortfall. And we just kept pushing that around, but nobody was really facing it. So I felt, if I'm going to be the executive director and I'm going to take this role, and this is it, we need to get to the bottom of it. So we had the meeting, Kitty was there, and it was a tough meeting, really. Basically, the only thing we can cut is staff. That's it, because we've already made the cuts on everything else at Extension. So it was a really tough week. The last 2 weeks, we basically had a net of 7 to 8 full-time people going to be eliminated from Extension over the next 6 months. Over the short term, 3 people, as of tomorrow, have left, and 2 people have taken early retirement. So over the next 2 months, we have a total of 5 people. And then by the end of the year, we'll be to 7 or 8, including cutting the hours of, I'd say, at least 75% of the staff by 25%. So it was a pretty massive cut. Kitty was there. I don't know if you want to say anything else, but it was pretty much a unanimous vote by the board. And me pushing forward saying, this is it. This is the time to do it. We can't wait any longer, because people are kind of tired of hearing, oh, we've got this financial problem. When are you going to get it resolved? And the only way to do it is really respond to the cuts and see where we stand. Now, moving forward, it's a 100% balanced budget. We can be honest about what we can deliver, and we can move forward together. So that's kind of my plan. But if anybody wants more details later, I'm happy to come back and meet and go through the exact details of what we did with the budgets and all that. I have everything.
Thank you. And yes, I do recognize that it was a very difficult thing for the cuts. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that it was cuts because of the downsizing from the state and the feds also. It wasn't simply because we decreased the amount of monies. They were cut from many places, so there was a lot of bleeding out to cooperative extension. But now with cooperative extension working in the direction that it's going to be working in, which is aligning that this county helps grow economically, hopefully things will change in a positive direction. And to say thank you, starting with a barn dance, ending with a gala, I think the 100th anniversary is a wonderful thing that cooperative extension is moving forward in a positive way. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I also appreciate the work that you're doing. I just wanted to clarify that the current staff levels are what, and by the end of the year would be projected to be what?
Currently now, let's see, we'd be at about 11 or 12 staff, and then by the end of the year, it would be down to about 9.
Okay.
The difference is that as of now, we've cut a bunch of staff's hours, and you know that's not sustainable. So already we went in, just so everybody knows, this is really important. We didn't go in and just fire people. We had individual meetings with all of our staff. It took a lot of time to look at where everybody was at, and certain people couldn't take a 10-hour week cut, so they had to actually leave. Other people, we offered a 20-hour cut, they couldn't take it. So those were the situations, and we tried to hold the whole place together, people that could take the cuts. There are going to be others that probably leave and stuff, so we're trying to sort that out. But for now, with these across-the-board cuts, it allows us to get down to basically 9 FTE, which is where our budget, will be balanced. And then it's important for everybody to know we're hiring a full-time ag program leader at the highest level at Extension. That's what the county needs. And Liz Higgins, who most of you know, was in that position. She left for personal reasons, not because of the downsizing. She lives in Ulster, and she needed to get back to her family there. But we need to have a person at that level in the county to lead us right now.
What's the title?
It's the agriculture program leader, and it requires a master's degree, and it's a higher level, somebody with, that understands like this food system, food hub, and can be at level, higher level meetings with the county as we move forward and really tackle these important issues.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. County clerk
Not here.
is not here, so Sullivan County College.
Cindy.
I'm here on behalf of Dr. Buggerson. We don't have a formal report today, but I'm just sending greetings from her. She's currently at a 3-day meeting of all of the community college presidents from the state university system. So she's due back this afternoon for a Board of Trustees meeting, so I'm sure she'll have several updates on that and about things currently in the hopper with the State University of New York and system and funding issues and tax-free New York updates and things like that. So thank you.
Would you please relay to the president that we're going to be having a public hearing next month regarding the college budget?
No, we're going to be setting a public hearing next month for August for the college budget. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. It's time for the towing presentation.
No. Can't we? Can we do this next month?
I think that the sheriffs and various people are here
Okay.
asking me,
I tried.
wanting to learn.
Hey,
Thanks, Scott.
it is what it is.
See you later.
Tell me when you...
I drink water for
I can
what
do
it
it.
is.
I can do it from here.
Uh,
By way of background,
Keep it brief.
You're supposed to spell it out by saying counselor.
By way of background, your chair asked that we assemble information concerning the towing policies of other jurisdictions because of the issues that had come up and wanted it related to evidentiary tows. And I can't find a good definition for evidentiary tow because everybody does it a little differently. I can list as far as an evidentiary tow all of the following and maybe others. Stolen vehicles, vehicles containing evidence of a crime, vehicles used in the commission of a crime, vehicles involved in a serious or fatal accident which have to be retained because they're criminal charges, a driver arrested on a charge and there's nobody else to drive the vehicle away, abandoned vehicles, unregistered vehicles, and in one county they consider vehicles seized by their civil division as being evidentiary tows. So it turns out they're all different. what I did is I contacted people in the various jurisdictions. This is Orange County. Orange County has perhaps the most complex policies with respect to towing, and I'll provide all of you with this afterwards. I also have a copy of the policies for most of them. I'm not going to distribute it to burden you with additional paper, but if you want it, I'll give it to you by email. Orange County, a few years ago, divided their county up into 9 separate sectors or quadrants, the criteria being that they had to have a towing company in each sector which could respond within 20 minutes of a call to any incident. They then went out to bid, and they bid for light, medium, and heavy tow in each of the 9 sectors. So in Orange County, when the deputy sheriff has to call on a towing company for a particular evidentiary tow, and sometimes even for not evidentiary tows, they use the light, medium, or heavy towing company who has the low bid for that particular sector, and the price is what was in the bid. It's not their regular price. It's detailed. Chief Honorati indicated that he'd get me copies of the bid specs. We don't have them as yet, but as you can see, there's a lot of detail for Orange County. They do not use a rotational or tow of the day. They only use, for their agency, the towing companies who won the bids when they were put out a couple of years ago. In Ulster County.
Just to interrupt you for a second.
Yes, sir.
There's 1 bid per sector?
There are 3 bids per sector: light, medium,
I understand
and heavy. But there's only 1 winner for each of those.
sector.
Right, and you could have this one towing company could be the winning bidder on light, medium, and heavy. But in that sector, that's the only person that the sheriff's department will go to is the winning bidder. That doesn't mean that, you know, others, if you ask for your own tow company, but we're talking about only when the sheriff is on scene. In Ulster County, they call for nearest available tow truck except in the town of Esopus because Esopus has its own list, and if the incident happens in the town of Esopus, they have to go to the rotational list for that particular town. So here you have a county which in effect has a policy that relates to one town differently than it relates to all of the other towns.
Sam, one question. Going back to Orange County. Do they handle county-owned vehicles from the same bid?
I didn't put that in the scope of this because my instructions from your chair were just to look at evidentiary tows.
The problem that we've
so
had
I don't
right
have all
along, excuse me, the problem that we've had right along is not for all the tows within the county. The problem when the conflict has come up regarding how the evidentiary tows are being handled. So with that in mind, I asked Sam to please gather the information from the surrounding areas just about evidentiary tows, because we have already a system in place for I broke down on the side of the road with my car and I can use the tow of the day, and or I want so-and-so to tow my car. We have a system in place at the present for the county-owned vehicles, so that's not the issue. The issue that keeps coming up has had to deal with the evidentiary-based tows, and that's why I asked Sam to gather what are the other counties doing regarding evidentiary-based tows. So the presentation today is simply about what other counties are doing for evidentiary-based tows, and I hope after gathering this information and everybody becoming aware of this, that we then formulate a group to come up with what we will cob together for ourselves in this county for our evidentiary-based tows, with the input from the county, from the various tow companies, and from the sheriff's department, since they're the ones who have to utilize this system.
Well, whatever, you know, I understand that, and that's great, but all I'm saying is, in the end, we need to have a comprehensive overall towing policy, not a section by section, so we have an overall plan. You know, and I understand this may be the only issue, but it should be everything. At the end, we have an overall policy for everything.
For county vehicles, we have a bid. We have a single company within the county, but, and another company if the towing has to be done from outside of the county. Am I correct, Kathy?
Yeah, the outside isn't covered this year, but yes.
Yeah. So that we did by bid. So all
No,
county vehicles are covered.
I'm saying we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but the bottom line is, when we're doing that, there's no reason to have a million, the staff is short, you know, we're so short-staffed already, there's no reason why evidentiary and county-owned vehicles can't be the same bid and doing it once. We just need to be specific on what we're asking.
If you want to do it that way, but let me go through, you'll see everybody does it differently, and all of the policies that I have are relatively comprehensive over all of those issues. And I can give you copies of all the policies. Two things about Ulster that are unique. One is that if they make an evidentiary tow in a case in which there are criminal charges pending, they pay the towing company, but then they pass the bill over to the district attorney and ask that the district attorney try to add that sum to the restitution amount at the conclusion of the criminal case. So they're looking to get that amount back from the criminal defendant in Ulster County. They also have a specific prohibition in their policy that no deputy is allowed to suggest a particular tow company to anyone on the side of the road who may need a tow. If they will not allow that. And they also, in their policy, when they talk about nearest available, they specifically exclude cruising tow companies. Or somebody, a towing company who may have heard of something on a scanner. Nearest available means the towing company whose base of operation is nearest to the incident. And so they try to avoid that kind of conflict in Ulster County. Delaware County.
Could you go back?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The last point on that slide.
The sheriff in Ulster County and in most of these jurisdictions you will see maintain a secure impound area. Orange County has a secure impound area. Ulster County has a secure impound area. We're going to go next to Delaware County. They have two areas that they can use. If it's very critical, they will put the vehicle into their own garage, and if not, they put it into the sheriff's yard, as they call it, up near the jail, where the sheriff's offices are. But all of them, with the exception of the city of Middletown, and they kind of a variation on that, have their own impound area. In Delaware County, they do not have in their policy a current means for selecting a particular towing company, and Lieutenant Buckley said they're in the process. They're going to be updating their policy as well. Each of these, by the way, they were very cooperative. It takes a while to get through to the right person, and they all asked, when we get done with this, could we send our compendium to each of them so they can look at what everybody else is doing. They do have their own impound locations. They only impound if absolutely necessary. So if it's a situation in which they think it's critical to have the car impounded, will they impound, because they, for cost reasons and because of the size of their impound area. And most of these, and you'll notice the last one on this, most of these that have a policy have a specific policy for how to inventory everything in the vehicle, because they're concerned about people claiming that things are missing or things of that sort. City of Middletown. City of Middletown is different for a very unique reason. The cities and towns have authority to regulate towing companies as a business. We do not. So if you look at any city, and I also have some information which I didn't put on here from the city of Utica, you'll find the exact same thing. The cities license or give permits to towing companies. We don't do that. When they license or give permits, they can impose all sorts of other requirements. In the city, they have restricted versus unrestricted licenses. They control the rates. They specify how large the impound area has to be, the height of the fence that must be around the impound area, and things of that sort. So if you're looking at a towing policy for a city or for a town, you're going to see something that's much different than you're going to see from a county sheriff or from the state police, which don't have the authority to actually regulate the towing companies themselves. City uses a rotational list unless they have a need for a critical impound and the company on that next on that list doesn't have a satisfactory impound area, they skip that company. The police department pays for the tows and then they seek reimbursement through the district attorney's office. New York State Police in Ferndale, and they have a very elaborate policy. It's one that's been developed over a period of years. It started with, I forget which zone, but it's now in our zone as well. The sergeant was extremely helpful, as was the captain. Their policy goes into every aspect of towing. They use rotational lists in each town. If they have an evidentiary tow, they're not concerned about who's making the tow because they maintain the chain of custody by actually following that tow to the impound area. So the trooper is the one who's maintaining the chain of custody. He's watching it the entire way. Most of them will go to SP Ferndale. If it's one where for some reason they need a heightened level of security, they take it to Middletown where there is a secure area. Now, I put this up here because of what happened originally. The first thing I said about Orange County, and Legislator Steingart asked about bidding. In Orange County, they did divide the county up into 9 sectors. We happen to have divided this county up into 5 areas for bids for stone and gravel. It's required by the DEC. When we go out for bids for stone, sand, gravel, I think asphalt as well, isn't it? Or not?
It used to be, but now it's state contract, but yes.
Okay.
It was
We
the
had
DOT.
to divide, the DOT divided our county up. So we took a look at those 5 because they happen to already exist. And then Kathy was kind enough to make a list of all the towing companies in the county. And there are 40 of them. And she then took that list and tried to correlate it to those zones that we already have for DOT purposes. And if you look at the list, you will find there are a lot of companies in some zones, but there are none in Zone 3. So we can't use the existing breakdown that we have. And if we had a bid in Zone 3, none of the companies would actually be within Zone 3 and within, whatever.
There's nothing in those townships.
This is from last year when we put this out. We got this list from the towing community and we reached out to all of them. So if there are any vendors in Zone 3, they did not respond.
I just find it hard to believe there's no tow company in Bethel.
You would think
there
that.
is boxes.
Pardon?
But they didn't respond.
They didn't
so
respond, but
They
there
didn't
are
respond.
tow companies.
So this is our present information. And so that concludes towing. Now, I have copies of that for each of you. And as far as the actual towing policies, I have them in the office. I can give them to you either in hard copy or by email if you want them.
Thank you, Sam. And I would suggest then that
you gotta
a
get
policy then gets coordinated and made and come up in public safety, which is where the issue needs to be resolved.
Use your copy of all the policies.
Well, I need to be really clear on what does happen next, because if we have it in public safety, what are we coming out of at the end of that? It goes back to you, Kathy?
Let me make one suggestion if I may.
Because I'm confused.
Go ahead, ask your question.
No, I mean, I just need to see this procedure through to the end.
You will
because-
notice that each of these policies is a policy of a law enforcement agency, not a policy of a municipality.
Or a county.
Or the county. It's not a policy of the city common council in Middletown. It's not a policy of any of the other counties. It's the policy of the law enforcement agency. It's the sheriff's office that's going to have to be satisfied with it and administer it. The county may have to cooperate with it to the extent that if we have a bidding requirement. My recommendation would be that we now turn all of this information over to the sheriff's office and work cooperatively to the extent that the sheriff's office needs anything from the county in terms of bidding authority or something of that sort, but that they come back with a recommended policy for Sullivan County.
My recollection, Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, is that there was a policy in 2007 and then it was amended or whatever word in 2010. Is that
That
how
was
it went?
directly from the sheriff's department. That had nothing to do with any of us.
But
Correct?
my concern is that one of the central issues that the towing community brought forward was this kind of basic inequity or unfairness that they perceive, whether it's actual or perceived, that some companies operate under 5 different names, and so they'll always get the lion's share of the business, and you know the county's really not in the, that's not our job. So I don't want to go through all of this and find out that the basic problem that they came to the legislature with, which is out of our jurisdiction to solve, is still unsolved.
Well, I think to answer that is if I had 5 different names, I could use any name I want, and that's my right. So if I'm a towing company and I have 5 different names, I can use my 5 different names and submit it that way. I think the light, heavy, and those other pieces that were brought forward here, light, medium, and heavy tows, would be where the restrictions would be. So if I'm company A, and I only have a light-duty truck, I can't be towing the big, heavy armored thing. So with that in mind, if it's an evidence-based tow, those limits need to be put, and then I would think that it would go forward from that direction. And again, we're not speaking of everything. The problem had arisen, if I'm remembering correctly, is that we took care of regular tows and we took care of county tows, but when the sheriff's department was looking for reimbursement for evidence-based tows, that's where the problem arose, and that's the solution that we're trying to get to. So I would think that working with the sheriff's department, we need to come up with the tow companies, having the documentation now of how it's done in the area, is how we need to go forward, and invite the various towing companies to the meeting. And then go forward from a meeting to.
One thing that, Sheriff, before you start, one thing about the 5 different names. If you look at Ulster County, they say nearest available based on where their location is. It doesn't make any difference how many names they have at location. They're not going to show up 5 different times. In Ulster County, what they do is they say, we're going to call the person whose yard is the nearest to this incident. And that automatically deals with that issue right off the bat. So there are ways of dealing with that. Sheriff, I apologize for interrupting.
No, that's okay.
Please.
If I'm clear. You brought up a couple of issues. I thought we were all clear except for evidentiary. We do a rotating list. There are people with more names that they use on that towing list. We don't get involved in deciding if it's good or bad. If it's licensed by the town, we don't get into it. If they've got a separate corporation, if they've met all the requirements to get a license from the town, I don't think it's appropriate for me to make that assertion. Now, the one that complains the most, I believe, has 2 names on the list. So it's just that the other has 4 and he only has 2. So it's, to me, it's a non-issue. If you've got 2 names or you have 4 names on the list, when we call for an accident or someone is broken down and we ask them first, do you have an owner's request or do you have AAA? If you have neither, then we have a rotating list and we advise them we will be going to the next tow on our list. And I don't want to be the one to stand there and tell somebody that they've gone through the cost to make a corporation, they have the appropriate trucks and everything that the town will give them a license. I don't think that's something I want to get involved in. So as far as rotation for a normal tow, as far as I'm concerned, that's already working. I don't really care to readdress that. I don't see how we're going to fix it. You're always going to be, I've been in this business 36 years, state police, now sheriff. I've dealt with other counties, I've talked to other state police agencies. Local towing is never fixed. There is no such thing as a fixed towing operation. There's always complaints. Now, to get to the evidentiary, we have created a policy. It was something we started new, and it got off to a rocky start. Now, we will, I've seen a couple of things here that look interesting that I would like to write back into the policy. Getting reimbursed through the DA's office, I think that's a great idea. But at the end of the day, we're not as complex a county. We don't have the population that Orange County does, with multiple cities, having Newburgh, Middletown, or Jervis.
Yeah.
We're a very rural county. All I want to do is mimic what we do for our cars and figure out a way to put out a bid or quote. It's not, you always get it wrong. For what someone will do that work for. I don't care who it is, as long as they meet the qualifications. The allegation is made, we pick who we want. We picked who had the county bid last time. And looking back, that probably wasn't the proper way to do it. It's a way to do it. But we want to put it out for a proper quote. I wouldn't care if it was added to whoever got the county bid. It's changed hands now, and whoever tows our cars, I'm fine with that. As long as I get somebody to call to move these vehicles. And the smallest percentage, they talk about, well, we could bill the insurance company. That's only for wrecks. That's only for a fatal accident. Any of the other stuff, there's no insurance involved. There's no big piggy bank to go to have a big recoup on your money. If we arrest them for drugs in the car, I got to tell you, if it's enough drugs, I said this before to you, we're going to try to seize the car. I don't need a partner. I don't need to have somebody having a towing bill and storage against that car. We've seized cars and we use those for undercover. So if somebody gets arrested for drugs or stolen property in the car, or the car is stolen, that there might be an insurance thing, but there's no big payoff. I'm not in the business of taking care of the tow truck operators. I'm in the business of taking care of the public. And if you have a stolen car, it's not up to me to make sure a big tow bill can be run up so somebody can cash in to make a living. I'm very sympathetic that it's a tough business. It's a hard business to be in. It's a dog eat dog. But my focus is that if somebody has their car towed for some reason, we may impound it and find out we're not even keeping it. We were wrong. You should not be.
At this point in time, I would, because of time, okay, I would suggest that we come up with a solution at a different time, and that solution might deal with the idea of dividing the nearest place versus 10 names, okay? And the other pieces that were brought up here, I think it'd be great if you could help us formulate something for the evidence base for the future.
Well, as the sheriff, I want to stick with the one vendor. I think going to multiple vendors on evidentiary tows is opening up a can. You're going to have a problem.
Well, that's something that would come up in the meeting.
Well, I'll write a policy. I will take some of this into consideration, but I'm looking for a bid to put out, get a quote, and I'm making a policy. And all the other counties that do this, the one constant is they make the policy.
Yes.
I'm going to make a policy, and I'm asking to get this done because we're doing business. I've asked for this other vendor to continue with the contract as quoted before because I have nobody to go to, and I'm very uncomfortable with that. Now, Eric, could you speak about what originally prompted this with the accident scene and being told?
We used to, we had a situation where a vendor didn't perform well, and attorneys came to us and said we needed to change our policy. So in 2008, we added to the county tows, we have a contract to tow county-owned cars. We added evidentiary tows on the bottom of that bid. And that continued on through the end of 2008. Then when the contract came out in 2009, it was missing. Now, we thought it was there until somebody foiled it in 2012 and made us aware it wasn't there. And that's when we ended up with this issue, what happened to our evidentiary tows. And that's how we ended up here.
No, I mean with the
Thank you.
accident, Eric.
Well, we don't want to go into that right now because of time restriction. Right now, I just wanted to have the presentation, and hopefully you will consider some of the information that has been provided here, and maybe we can actually come up with a plan for the evidentiary tows that has been missing since 2009? Eight. So that's what we're trying to get to.
Yes, we'll make a written plan. I will take some stuff out of this, and we'll move forward and we'll submit that.
Thank you. Okay, so
Madam Chair, can we make some blocks here?
Please. Somebody want to make a suggestion as to what we want to?
I'm not.
Reimbursement, so.
I'm not on this committee.
Well, one is a lot different than the rest. You should do one and then.
One, all right, one separate and then the rest in a block.
Okay, to authorize the extension agreements for the continuity of services.
Alan? Ira. Is that Ira or Jonathan?
What's that?
Is there any discussion
No,
on this?
I heard the second, I already, Sandra didn't say.
All in favor? Since there's no discussion?
5-0.
Okay. And then we're going to block together 2 through 10?
Yep.
That's, okay, thank you. Is there any discussion regarding the resolutions 2 through 10? Do I need to read them or can you read them? Okay, good. So is there any discussion on the items of 2 through 10?
All in favor?
Okay, all in favor?
5-0.
Great. All right, so I believe then we've completed the resolutions and all of the reports. It's time for public comment. Is there any public comment? Yes, Doc.
I just have a question for the Cornell Cooperative Extension. They were saying that they're going with this, healthier food push with their kitchen and the food hubs coming in, which is also supposed to be going with healthier food for the local distribution as well as outside markets. Are they also going to be coordinating with the Liberty Slaughterhouse Project to get an animal welfare approval certification for that? Because that definitely promotes not only healthier food, but it also cuts down on pollution and it will help for the care of the animals in a better condition, plus the workers in those facilities will benefit from better conditions. So I just want to know if they...
I appreciate your question. I don't believe there's anybody here from Cooperative Extension at this time to answer your question. I would suggest then that you send an email or a formal letter to them asking that question of them. Is there any other public comment? Okay, so then I need to ask for an adjournment.
Jonathan, Ira.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
1:58.
Oh, no, we're going to take about a 20-minute break.
No, you're not.
No, 12:58. Huh?
About 10 minutes.
No.
Okay, Government Services is adjourned. Thank you all.